When looking at the relationship between the Byzantines and the Arabs in the Middle Ages, it is easy to assume that they remained fiercely contested, two sides of the same coin engaged in an eternal military battle. However, the reality is that although the two cultures were rivals, divided by religion and conflicting geopolitical goals, their relationship was a complex one, characterized not just by war, but by intellectual exchange, flourishing trade, and at times a mutual respect that contributed to high points for both societies, such as the Macedonian Renaissance, Islamic Golden Age, and much more. So join us as we explore the Byzantine-Arab relations of the early Middle Ages. This video was sponsored by our kind YouTube members and patrons. Becoming a YouTube member or patron is the best way to support our work, so we're now providing our supporters with exclusive videos to thank them. Join their ranks to watch the Pacific War series, alongside the First Punic War, Sulla's biography, the Italian War of Unification, Risorgimento, the Russo-Japanese War, Albigensian Crusade, History of Prussia, and much more. 80 or so exclusive videos in total. In 2024, YouTube members and patrons will watch series on the Fall of Sparta, the Reconquista, Second Punic War, Spanish War of Succession, and Russian Civil War, and will continue getting early access to all videos, access to an exclusive Discord server, will know our schedule, and vote on future videos. YouTube member and patron support allows us to keep the majority of our videos free in a world where YouTube monetization income is very uneven. If you want to support our work, join their ranks today via the link in the description and pinned comment. Thank you. In the 7th century AD, as Arab armies settled into their vast newly conquered territories in the formerly Eastern Roman provinces of Syria, Egypt, and North Africa, the conflict between these both now exhausted sides began to die down. The Byzantine Empire, reeling from numerous defeats and internal instability, was in no position to challenge the Caliphate, while similarly, the Islamic State was also suffering from domestic turmoil, as the Umayyads, who had maintained power for over 100 years, became embroiled in the Third Fitna. This conflict would bring the rise of the Abbasids and change the face of the Islamic world, heralding a new age of Arab-Byzantine relations. The Byzantine-Abbasid relationship, though perhaps more nuanced than their one with the Umayyads, was still fraught with conflict. While the Abbasids, unlike their Umayyad predecessors, did not pursue active expansion, they did revive the annual raids on Byzantine lands which had begun to decline in the wake of the Abbasid revolution. Caliph Harun al-Rashid in particular pursued many conflicts against his Byzantine neighbours, attempting to increase his status as a pious defender of the faith, extending fortifications on the Arab side of the frontier, the Al-Awasim, campaigning into the Syrian marches, and leading a series of expeditions into Anatolia. The first campaign in 782 saw Byzantine forces defeated, a 3-year armistice signed, and the levying of a heavy annual tribute. In 806, after several smaller raids, Roman Emperor Nicephorus refused to pay tribute, and the Caliph responded by gathering forces for the largest Abbasid expedition ever. In but a few months, al-Rashid laid waste to the Byzantine frontier zone, sacking the fortified town of Heraclea Sabistra and raided as far north as Ancyra. The beleaguered Nicephorus, outnumbered and preoccupied with the Bulgar threat, was forced to sue for peace, paying a hefty tribute, and even more humiliatingly, paying the jizya tax in recognition of his status as one of the Caliph's subjects, also promising to demilitarize the frontier zone. After exchanging gifts with Nicephorus, al-Rashid withdrew. However, the Byzantine emperor proved untrustworthy, going back on his word, ceasing his annual payments, and fortifying the frontier. Despite some retaliatory attacks by the Abbasids, none would succeed in bringing the obstinate emperor to heel. The Abbasids also did not hesitate to intervene in Byzantine internal affairs. In 821, Thomas the Slav rebelled against the Roman emperor, backed by an army from the Caliph al-Mamun. Only 2 themata in Asia Minor kept their loyalties to the Emperor Michael II, but the Theodosian walls of Constantinople stopped Thomas's advance. Despite this, Abbasid aggression continued, as the caliphs had not yet given up their designs on Asia Minor. In 838, they sacked the prosperous city of Amorion, something that was hailed as a great victory in the Caliphate, though it achieved little in the long term. The Byzantine-Arab conflict was not limited to the Abbasid juggernaut to their east, for the Roman Empire also had to contend with smaller Arab polities across the Mediterranean. The rising Aghlabids of North Africa began in the 820s the long process that resulted in the Islamic conquest of Sicily. Moreover, the Byzantines found themselves beset by threats from Arab pirates, with the seafaring Emirate of Crete being a particularly troublesome thorn in Constantinople's side. It is clear based on this that during the early Middle Ages, the military conflicts between the Byzantines and the Arabs were defined by a great power imbalance, one skewed in favour of the Arabs, with the Byzantines more often than not forced into tributary status or having their lands heavily plundered. Although the Romans never became fully subservient and often showed a scrappy defiance against Arab aggression, they did have to be acquiescent to the domineering Caliphate. However, the Abbasids and Byzantines' relationship was far more complex than simply military conflict. As much as the two warred, so too did they engage in a remarkable era of diplomatic activity, characterized by grand embassies. The Chronicle of Theophanes Continuatus describes one such embassy in 830, with the Byzantine envoy John the Grammarian arriving in the Caliph's court with valuable gifts of financial resources, works of art, and texts. Upon his arrival, the Caliph returned the favour with gifts of equal value. Both sides would go to great lengths to impress one another. According to Ibn Miskawayh, in 917, two newly arrived Byzantine ambassadors were denied access to Baghdad for 2 months, as palaces and demonstrations were meticulously prepared for them at the steep cost of 30,000 dinars. Hilal al-Sabi, who also described this embassy, noted the installation of sumptuous decorations to enhance the palace's beauty, along with richly embroidered carpets adorning the walls to best impress the Byzantine envoys. Even before reaching the palace, the guests were guided through a zoo featuring elephants and an artificial lake, as well as a park with a silver tree decorated with golden leaves. This relationship would also often take on an intellectual dimension, as the Arab world put great value on knowledge from the classical Greco-Roman world, which the Byzantines were the heirs to. As such, gifts often exchanged by the Byzantines in embassies were ancient Greek manuscripts. In a particularly intense period of contact between Byzantium and Al-Andalus in 948, the Emperor Constantine VII sent many copies of ancient literature to the Caliph of Cordoba, Abd al-Rahman III, such as a magnificent manuscript of Dioscorides and a historical work of Paul Orosius. Later, the Caliph's son, Al-Hakam II, directly requested even more ancient philosophical works from the Roman Empire. In Baghdad, Caliph al-Mamun received texts of Plato, Aristotle, Hippocrates, Galen, Euclid, and Ptolemy in an exchange with the empire. The value the Arabs placed in these works was great. It was said to have been more precious than gold, and went beyond merely satisfying the intellectual curiosity of a bored caliph, but actively helped fuel the scientific revolution going on in the Muslim world. However, all this left Arab-Byzantine relations in a paradoxical state, as at the same time as they warred on the field of battle, they held great embassies and exchanged gifts and academic ideas. Though it should be noted that while this fascination with the ancient Greeks and Romans gripped the Arab world, their Philhellenism still took a distinct hostility to the Byzantines, who they saw as failing in their duties as successors to the classical legacy, a position which had passed to the Arabs. This loss was felt among many Byzantine intellectuals as well, who fell behind their Muslim counterparts, leaving the Byzantines ideologically lost. In response to this, Byzantine scholars and clergymen successively organized ecumenical councils, theological disputes, and even actively searched for evidence of their views in old patristic works of Constantinople's libraries. In the words of Michael Sellis, the Greeks became barbarians while the barbarians became Greeks. When it came to academia, the Byzantines and Arabs, rather than engaging in a relationship which was either wholly hostile or wholly friendly, developed a unique rivalry as they postured and attempted to outdo one another under the guise of a sort of collaboration. Diplomats sent to courts became scholars and theologians who would often argue with their rivals present whilst presenting gifts in each other's works. The Roman response to the Arab cultural supremacy may have laid the groundwork for the intellectual and artistic resurgence in the Macedonian Renaissance, setting the stage for a golden age, as simultaneously exchanged texts encouraged the Islamic golden age. Beyond the intellectual also came a great exchange in physical goods between the Arab and Greek worlds. Running through both the Arab and Eastern Roman worlds was not only the western edge of the Silk Road, but also the north-south overland routes that ran across the Arabian Peninsula to Eastern Africa. The convergence of these routes led to a melting pot of different cultural goods as objects from China, Arabia, Ethiopia, and Europe flowed through their borders. The most valued of these precious items were the luxury silks, spices, and incense that came from the Far East, fetching a high price in both the Caliphate and Empire, with the Byzantines in particular able to profit from this as Europe's only link to East Asia. Such valuables could only be afforded by the rarefied elite. However, many other goods disseminated widely into the lower tiers of society. Ostraka, for instance, a piece of Greek pottery, became commonplace in the Caliphate as a useful tool. The flourishing of trade also saw structural changes to the urban landscape, as large markets sprung up hosting merchants from across the globe. The relationship between the two worlds, however, began to dramatically shift as the balance of power changed. As early as 820, the Abbasids had struggled with the disintegration of central authority, with many local rulers across the Caliphate gaining more influence and regional autonomy. As the realm decentralized, various dynasties became independent. In 876, the Saffarids came close to taking Baghdad, and the Tulunids took hold of Egypt before seizing most of Syria. The reign of Caliph al-Mu'tadid brought back some of the lost lands into the Abbasid fold, but the situation was clearly getting out of hand, especially as the state was still rocked by the anarchy at Samarra in 861, with widespread violence over the successions of the caliphs. By the turn of the 10th century, Iraq fell into the hands of small local emirs, who the caliph had to recognize, creating the position Amir al-Amara, Caliph of Caliphs. The role of the caliph was reduced to little more than a figurehead for the rulers of powerful external dynasties, and the Abbasid lands, on the occasion they were held by the caliph, were limited to the borders of Iraq. At this same time, the Byzantines were also experiencing a reversal in their previously dubious fortunes, their influence growing at the expense of the Arab world. In 863, Umar al-Aqta, Emir of Melitene, was defeated at Lalakaon. The battle eliminated the powerful Emir who had posed one of the greatest threats to Byzantium's eastern border and marked a turning point as the Byzantines finally took to the offensive. Within a few months, Byzantine armies marched into Armenia, killing Emir Ali ibn Yahya, its Muslim governor, and securing the province. The continued fracturing of the Abbasid Caliphate only worsened the Muslim position and flared hostilities as the empire struck back against centuries of Arab aggression. However, it was the rule of the Macedonian dynasty that saw the true revival of Byzantine power, placing the Eastern Roman Empire above the Arab world for the first time. Basil I began this process by ending the short-lived Muslim rule over southern Italy, while John Kokuas, one of the empire's most influential generals, conquered Melitene and Theodosipolis, two of the greatest border emirates. The Phorcas clan returned Crete to the empire, as well as vanquishing the mighty Hamdanid emir of Aleppo, Saif al-Dawla, setting the stage for the reconquest of Cilicia and Syria by Basil II, territories not maintained since the rule of Heraclius. Within 2 centuries, the Byzantine Empire underwent a significant transformation, shifting from being the lesser partner to asserting not only its military dominance, but its cultural and intellectual prowess. This shift was marked by the Macedonian Renaissance, which triggered a Byzantine revolution in art, literature, and science. The resurgence of large-scale religious art followed the Second Iconoclasm in 843, with the art of the period drawing inspiration from the classical and naturalistic styles. This newfound artistic expression, including the painting of religious figures in icons, may have influenced Italian artists during the emergence of the Italian Renaissance. A proliferation of literature also occurred amidst the Cultural Revolution. Encyclopedism, the collection and ordering of knowledge in all spheres, became a key aspect of the intellectual Renaissance. As though many new texts were developed, many others left dusted and forgotten were brought into the limelight, allowing them to now be easily accessed by all scholars. The result was a collection of texts in administration, military affairs, agrarianism, taxation, and law. Emperor Constantine VII Porphyrogenitos exemplified this transformation, having 3 encyclopedic manuals produced, De Administrando Imperio, De Thematibus, and De Ceremoniis. A great priority was also placed upon education, which flourished, as the University of Constantinople boasted a plethora of talented scholars and polymaths, the likes of Leo the mathematician to Michael Psellus. Intellectually, the Arab world, despite the political situation, still reigned supreme in the 10th century through scientists such as Ibn al-Haytham, Nastulus and Abd al-Rahman al-Sufi, and poets and philosophers like Omar Khayyam and Al-Farabi. These, alongside other figures of scholarly erudition, all helped to contribute to the ongoing Islamic Golden Age. However, the intellectual contact between the Byzantine and Arab worlds began to decline in the 10th and 11th centuries, as the lack of a centralized caliphate meant that the grand embassies which had been held in previous centuries were no longer possible. After this, the relationship between the Byzantine and Arab worlds devolved into one more focused on a military rivalry, as Byzantium, under the command of a series of strong emperors, sought to reclaim the lands it had lost. In the history of human relations, few nexuses of cultural contact stand as complex as the Byzantine-Arab one of the early Middle Ages, with its dizzying contrast between conflict and collaboration, rivalry and intellectual exchange. While military campaigns and power imbalances marked their interactions, a deep fascination in the classical world formed a unique bond between the two, fueling both the Islamic Golden Age and Macedonian Renaissance. At the turn of the 11th century, however, this exchange, which saw the Byzantine and Arab world collaborate, would die off with the lack of a unified caliphate, and with it the two worlds would sink into a long decline as nomadic Seljuks and crusading armies pierced the region. More videos on Byzantine history, Islamic history and cultural history are on the way. To ensure you don't miss them, make sure you are subscribed and press the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we've started making weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.